Hey y'all, I'm Grady. I'm one of, oh, hey, thanks, start clapping now, that's good. Thanks. I'm not Sunye, I'm really sorry to disappoint you. I'm one of the co-founders of the New York Asian Film Festival, and I wrote for Variety and places like that and about Korean films and Asian films and all that. But I gotta say, I'm really more of a movie guy than a K-pop guy. I know movies, I don't know Korean dramas that well, I don't know K-pop that well. So I'm just focusing on movies, because there's two things in my experience I've really learned sort of cut through all cultural barriers. They cut through language, they cut through age, they cut through everything. One of them is Rain's abs. The second is movies, but Rain's abs too. You don't have to speak Korean, you can just appreciate them. You know, a village in Africa to a multiplex in Seoul, Rain's abs or a movie speak to everyone. And I want to sort of talk about two things while I'm here. One is sort of where movies fit into this whole Hallyu wave phenomena, and then the other is sort of how you get involved. Because the fact is, you kind of got a choice in life. You're either going to be a consumer or you're going to be a producer. You can kind of split the difference, be a little of both, but you really got to choose. Are you going to sit there passively and take what's given to you, or are you going to engage with it and get out there and make something happen? And you know, more and more people are doing the latter, but I'm sort of going to get into that and how that with the Hallyu wave works out. But to start with sort of where films fit into the Hallyu wave is they don't. K-pop and Korean dramas have been the ambassadors for Korea around the world. They've made it hugely famous, and they've really spoken to everyone. You know, in a way, Korean movies haven't. And, but I do think, and we'll get back to this in a minute, that in America, movies actually might be the sort of key to unlock the Hallyu wave over here. But to give you sort of a brief kind of potted history of the Korean film industry, around '99 is when people in the West started to notice the Korean film industry as this phenomena. It started, the domestic box office in Korea was getting better and better. Movies like Shiri and The Contact and a few years later, Joint Security Area were coming along. They were starting to get brought out to film festivals. Critics were noticing, audiences were noticing. And that's really when it started to take off for the new sort of Korean renaissance in film. Over the next several years, people like Park Chan-wook with Old Boy and Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance and Thirst, but I guess that wasn't out yet. And also directors like Kim Ji-won with A Tale of Two Sisters, and also Kim Ki-duk. Their movies were getting screened around the world. Critics were loving them. People were feeling very, you know, thinking that Korea is this insanely violent place. You know, these were sort of the ambassadors out there, and they were winning awards at Cannes. You know, Old Boy won a special award at Cannes. Tale of Two Sisters did a relatively okay run in the US. But these movies were really moving around, and these names became really in the film sort of circles of like film nerd people. Real names to conjure with. And you know, and in the US, it's interesting because during this sort of early 2000s period, people like Park Chan-wook, even Bong Joon-ho to some extent, and Kim Ki-duk, they really captured the critical attention. They won awards. They were taken seriously. It wasn't like Hong Kong films, which have been largely sort of as popular as they were in the US, were sort of, oh, chopsaki movies. You know, it was like a lot of the attention for Hong Kong movies was like, how is Jackie Chan going to almost die in this movie? And it wasn't so much on the artistry, it was more on the artistry of like falling. And so, but the Korean movies got really taken seriously. I mean, Kim Ki-duk was getting covered in all the big magazines, Park Chan-wook. And so what was happening was they captured the high ground, but they couldn't make the low ground work. They couldn't get out to people. There was an attempt, Miramax tried to release Shiri in the US. And how many people here have actually seen Shiri? I know, it's like 99, right? Most of you weren't born then. Like Shiri, it was amazing because I actually worked on that campaign for them as like a consultant, which meant I took money and then told them to do things they didn't do. And I remember they kept trying to sell Korean movies as the new Hong Kong movies. And their poster for Shiri was this, they got this Chinese model, this woman, and they took a photo of her from here to here with this dress slit up to here and one of her breasts sort of hanging out. And I thought, yeah, because the part with the Chinese prostitute's really important in Shiri. Everyone's gonna remember that. And you know, the movie totally tanked and bombed. And one after another, I mean, the company Kino, bless their hearts, they kept kept picking up one Korean movie after another. And these were guys who made all this money on art films, and they really were like, Korean movies are big, we've heard this from critics, and they kept releasing them. And it was like they were just pushing them out of windows. Boom, boom, boom. One after, they had 5 flops in a row. Like altogether, the 5 Korean releases from Kino grossed less than like $30,000 US. I mean, it was really a bummer for these guys because their hearts were in the right place. They were good movies. Americans just didn't care because Americans are really good at not caring about things from other countries. It's like our superpower. But the Korean industry was doing better and better at home and overseas, you know, the Yansama in Japan, you know, I mean, granted, Winter Sonata is what made him popular there, but when April Snow came out, he went over and was mobbed by middle-aged ladies and everything. And so, you know, in Cannes, they were the toast of the town. And even in France, Korean movies did pretty well theatrically. And in the US, they just couldn't get them off the ground. And in 2007, the Korean film industry did something that gave me so much hope for its future, which is that it failed. The Korean film industry fell flat on its face in 2007. All this momentum was building up internationally. 2006 was an insane year in Korea. There were so many movies getting produced in Korea in 2006 that they had to borrow cameras from Japan just to shoot everything. The rental houses were done. The shelves were empty. And basically what was happening was what happened to Hong Kong in 1997 and 98, which was a bubble formed. Too many movies were being made too fast, and too many of them sucked. They would get some, you know, TV star, rush them into a project with a half-baked script, put in a subplot about their mother dying of cancer, and just push it out on screens. And audiences aren't stupid. You can fool them for a year or two, but eventually they sort of like get an allergic reaction to your suckage. And that's what was happening. And then this like statistic came out at the end of 2006 that like really you could hear producers having heart attacks all the way over in New York. You heard these Korean producers read this. A study was done, I think by Kofik, I'm not sure though on that, but it said that 10% of Korean movies broke even or made a profit. 1 out of 10. That's horrible. That's like if 10 cars blew up, 9 of them blew up and 1 didn't, you would just start walking everywhere, you know? And so 2007 was this hangover, and people were like, keep me away from movies. And what happened next was amazing, because 2007, 2008, the Korean film industry, and also it didn't help in all this, and I'm not going to get up on my soapbox, the soapbox I stood on for a long time, and I'm tired of it, but it didn't help that this was around the same time that the United States, through the Motion Picture Association, had sort of concluded its ongoing warfare with the Korean film industry and demanded and finally received, after years of battling, a reduction of the Korean film quota system, which left the Korean film industry completely exposed to Hollywood films. And so that was sort of a factor in all this, too. But what was happening in 2007 is these big star vehicles were coming out and flopping, except for D-War. I gotta say, and can we just talk about D-War for a second? Has anyone seen D-War? Like, okay, good. No one's willing to admit it, which means you have some dignity. You know, if anyone doesn't know, this was Shim Hyung-rae, his big, giant dragons eating Los Angeles and a little bit of Korea too, epic, that came out, I think, in 2007, and it came out in the US, and it holds the title of the highest grossing movie ever released in America, made like $10 million, and that's so sad. I mean, Dragon War is like drinking too much soju. It seems like a good idea at first, and then you feel sick afterwards and get a headache. So we're not gonna talk about Dragon War. For the rest of this conversation, the highest grossing Korean movie in America is the #2 spot, which is Kim Ki-duk's Spring, summer, fall, winter, spring, and summer. Anyways, at 2.3 million. We're forgetting about D-War. So anyways, that came out in 2007. I believe it was 2007. But all these big movies were coming out and no one was going to see them. And what was picking up the pace, what started to come up were movies that no one thought had a chance. Movies like The Chaser. Movies like Forever the Moment. Movies with sort of a mid-level cast, but a good script where the producers just left it alone. The managers left it alone, and they let people make movies. And what started to happen, even though the audiences weren't there for a bit, from about 2007 through now, all these middle-range movies in Korea have been hits, and they've been word-of-mouth hits. And there's nothing healthier for a film industry to stop making the giant, you know, Transformers 3 frontline kind of spectacles, and to start making movies that people actually want to see, and not just want to see, but want to tell other people to see. And so what you have now in Korea in the film industry is this really healthy situation. I mean, right now Korea is having its best box office year ever. I think it's like at 14 million moviegoers, way over what it was before. So many movies have passed the 10 million admissions mark. Two, actually, with Masquerade and whatchamadoohickey. Come on, you all know this. Masquerade, and this is what happens when you don't have notes. I heard someone just whisper it right now. Sorry? No. Sorry, yeah, Masquerade and Thieves. Masquerade and Thieves, which are these big hits over the 10 million mark. Nothing's been over 10 million in a while in Korea. You've got more admissions at this point now than the last year's had by the end of the year. You still got a couple of months left to go. And the movies that are being hits, I mean, you look at it, movies from last year like Sunny, you know, movies from this year like Masquerade, movies that have medium budgets and movies that don't have giant, huge superstars or have to have giant, huge superstars in the lead and that are really cleaning up. And this is something that China doesn't have. China doesn't have that middle range. It doesn't have those medium budgeted movies that stand a chance at the box office. China has blockbusters by Zhang Yimou where giant armies run around on a plane and wave banners for a while. Or they have movies made on video about how horrible it is to live in China and they can't be shown in China. So they've got those, the top and the bottom, but they don't have the middle. And the reason you need the middle is because people who work in movies, they got to learn what they're doing. And the only way to learn how to shoot a movie is to shoot a movie. The only way really to learn how to act in a movie is to act in a movie. So if you've only got giant movies, you're making less movies and people are getting less experience and your industry is dying. And that's what's sort of happening with China. And right now, China has this life support system from Hong Kong that's propping its movie industry up. And hopefully they'll get going before Hong Kong's bled dry in terms of talent. But what Korea has is it's developed that middle itself. And in the last years, which are hard, a lot of good people lost their jobs. A lot of producers couldn't buy their second, vacation home because their movies flopped. But Korea built this middle. And so now that brings us to America, because believe it or not, Korean movies are still flopping in America, one after the other. What you have in America is this weird thing, which is we hate subtitles. We hate reading, we hate anything that reminds us of school. Show us someone from another culture and we'll go to McDonald's, thanks. And so in the US, what's happened is really interesting because there's actually a Korean language circuit that's kind of sprung up where Korean movies are being shown and doing pretty well. CGV, which is an offshoot of CJ, the giant entertainment chaebol, they're showing Korean movies and doing okay in some markets. Independent distributors and exhibitors are releasing some Korean movies on screens. And also companies, smaller American companies like Wellgo, they're gonna have, I think, Thieves playing at an AMC around here, like next week, around October 15th, I think. And so these movies are going out to these small audiences, most of whom are Korean speaking, but some of whom are art house audiences. And they're starting to somewhat respond to them, but not really. But they're growing it. And you've got these companies like Wellgo who are small. They're not Warner Brothers. They're not 20th Century Fox. They were originally a karaoke laserdisc company in Texas. And the owner's Hong Kong Chinese, and she wanted to start releasing Hong Kong movies. And so she started releasing a few, doing really well. They released the Ip Man movies with Donnie Yen. And they started branching out into Korean movies. And what they're doing is these limited theatrical releases and these giant DVD and VOD releases where they're really making their money. And this is growing for them. It's sustainable. It's not a bubble. No one's jumping out ahead. No one's saying, my God, we need $5 million and P&A money to get this movie out there. They're doing it smart. And they're doing it smart the way Korea's had to do it, which is you start thinking about the middle. You start saying, okay, I'm not giant. I'm not going to get to sit at the banquet table and eat a giant, piece of barbecued rib. But I can get the scraps that fall off. And if I get enough of those, kind of disgusting metaphor, I'm sorry. No, but if I get enough of those, I've got a meal. It didn't get less disgusting. I'm really sorry. So that is this really healthy sort of thing that's developed. But this is where sort of the Hallyu wave comes in, because I think this is growing. And this is just based on my opinion. And I'm wrong like a lot. I've been wrong 5 times today. I went to the wrong place to do this talk tonight. So take this for what it's worth. But what's starting to happen is, you look at the Hallyu wave and you see how popular K-pop is. And you know, I think it's great, but I don't think it's going to break through the way people think it is in the US. I think it's going to find a really dedicated core of fans. I think there are going to be a lot of them. I think touring the US is going to be a part of every Korean star's like future. I think the same way Andy Lau comes and plays a lot of theaters, the same way the Bollywood stars come and play US theaters. I don't see a lot of K-pop going mainstream. I mean, I love Gangnam Style. But let's face it, it's the Macarena of 2012. Like, Psy is going to play some concerts and do some appearances. He's not, I don't think, going to have a #1 album coming up anytime soon unless it's the Gangnam Style album. And his next one won't. Because I don't think there's an audience for what the K-pop crowd is doing that's that big in America. Americans look at One Direction. They look at Rihanna. They look at these guys and they're like, well, why do we want K-pop? And I think there's always going to be a great group of fans who love this stuff. And I think their love is beautiful. But I think the general mall-dwelling public isn't going to go for it. Then you look at sort of Korean television dramas. Also, a huge core of fans. You look at the Drama Fever guys who stream this stuff over here. Their business has grown by leaps and bounds in the last 5 years. But, you know, when you're looking at an American mainstream audience, which can watch Breaking Bad or Homeland or NCIS, you know, they're going to have a hard time, a lot of them, seeing what's the appeal of Korea. They're not even going to want to give them a chance to a large extent. And I think what you also see in this is if something's going to break through to the mainstream, not just get a passionate crowd of fans. And by passionate crowd of fans, I mean, you know, enough people to fill a 30,000 seat stadium, but not enough people to put you on the #1 on the Billboard charts for 20 weeks. And people are looking for something different than what we have here, and they don't want the context. If you have to explain to them why they should appreciate something, you've lost them. It just needs to stand on its own. And the thing that does that, besides Rain's abs, are movies. And movies are where it could go, I think, really in Korea's hair. Movies have not broken Hallyu over in other countries, really. But in America, they might, because the Korean movie industry makes really good-looking movies. For the budgets they're working on, these movies look the equivalent of anything from the US that's made for $50 or $60 million. Sure, the special effects sometimes don't hold up, but really, they look slick. And Korean filmmakers have always, in the beginning, taken cues from the Japanese film industry. And the one cue they took was to have a really high level of craftsmanship. If you want a director of photography, an electrician, a lighting guy, a makeup artist who knows what they're doing, you these days want a Korean crew. More and more Chinese films are bringing Korean crews over. More and more films are shooting in Korea to take advantage of Korean crews because they turn out some slick product. I mean, the movie that a Korean crew turns out in their sleep is probably better than the movie an Italian crew spent 2 years working on right now. Nothing against Italy. But also, the other thing is, Korean movies are selling something that you are not getting in America. The problem when they came over the first time is American distributors are a superstitious and cowardly lot. If you want to find the biggest bunch of crybabies on the planet, find American film distributors. They will not take a chance on anything. You can give them a movie, take them to the future, show them that it made $100 million, bring them back here and they go, I don't know. It's a big gamble. So what they took a chance on were action movies and horror movies. Because according to American distributors, what sells in America, actually there's a third kind of movie I'll get to in a minute, sort of offensive, so I'll do that third. But they know how to sell an action movie because Hong Kong sold them to the US for years. And they know how to sell a horror movie because with The Ring and stuff from Japan, oh yeah, well, the dead girls with long hair and they're wet and angry, we can do that. The third, and so they know, and so every Korean movie or every Asian movie really becomes an action movie or a horror movie when an American distributor gets a hold of it. Then the third kind is the exotic art film, where they take you and they say, look at this culture, isn't it quaint? Look how Asian it is, oh my God. And one reason Kim Ki-duk's movie did so well is because it was about Buddhism. And it was this very elemental movie, and it was broken off from sort of mainstream modern Korean society about monks in a monastery. And it really told a story. You didn't need to know a lot about Korea to understand, but you could look at the pretty scenery and see the amazing Buddhism, and wow, you felt like you were kind of in school, but you were at a movie, so bonus. And so that's what American distributors can sell. What Korea is making now is what people in America actually want to watch. And I say this, I say this because for the 12 years I've been showing films in New York with the New York Asian Film Festival, the guys who do this with me and I, we're at every screening. And so I've stood in the back of a theater for about 12 years watching white people watch Asian films. And I've gotten a pretty good idea of what they like and don't like, at least in New York. And what we've seen happening is kids who've grown up on anime, kids who've grown up on manga, kids who are now growing up on K-pop and before that J-pop, these kids, they don't care about reading subtitles. Most of them are people who want to read their manga, right to left anyways, and in black and white. So, they're weird for an American. So subtitles are like nothing to them. And more than that, these are people who want to make the effort. They've got some grounding in the culture. Even if their grounding's Naruto, even if their grounding is like, Psy, they know what's going on. They're not laughing at it. They're there to laugh with it. They're there to enjoy it. And what a lot of these kids want isn't the action, and it's not the horror. What they want to see are, and what we've seen from our point of view at the festival is, they want to see romances and they want to see comedies. And more than that, they want to see romantic comedies. And it's amazing because in America right now, no one seems able to make a romantic comedy. I don't know if you've seen a romantic comedy in America recently, but they're horrible. It's like Jennifer Garner or someone you don't really care about that much, and they run after someone at the end, and they fall down a lot. And if they're a professional woman, they really just want to settle down and have a baby. And if they're a dude, they just want, to finally be noticed and all that. And they're horrible. And I think audiences are starting to learn that. And what we've seen at the festival is over and over and over again. What sells out like a heartbeat are movies like All About My Wife, movies like Couples, movies like Sunny, movies about women, movies that have romance, and movies that do comedies. And we're seeing men in there, we're seeing women, we're seeing black, white, Korean, Japanese, Chinese. And that's this growing thing. And people want to see this stuff, and America's not making it. We showed a movie last year called Castaway on the Moon. I don't know if anyone's seen this. Yes, I agree with you. Yeah, which was much my reaction. And it was our audience's reaction. I mean, this movie we sort of showed it and we were like, oh, it's, we can't really like put it in a genre slot. It's gonna be okay. And it sold out before anything else we were showing sold out. It won the Audience Award at the festival by hundreds and hundreds of votes. It then came out on Netflix Instant Watch and became the most rented title on Netflix Instant Watch solely through word of mouth for almost 5 weeks. And here is a Korean romantic comedy about an agoraphobe who's covered in horrible scabs and a dude living on an island who's covered in horrible scabs. And Americans are going, oh, it's so romantic, and reading subtitles. How are they hearing about this movie? I don't know. It's this internet's thing, I guess. But this is what people are responding to here, and this is what Korea's making. And, I heard someone on the subway yesterday talking about Sunny. And I was like, what? And it was like a white person. And I was like, there's something wrong here. And so where I see it happening in America, the Hollywood waves, is I see some distributor, some brave or drunk distributor, is going to take a chance on a Korean romantic comedy, and they're going to make a little money. And they're going to do another one and make a little more money. And it's going to pick up and up and up. And before you know it, all the Korean romantic comedy directors will be in Hollywood, not working, and it'll suck again. But there's going to be a brief, beautiful moment when it really works. And I trust Korea, because it's done it smart so far. What Hong Kong did when they came to America is they just said, hey, put me in a Hollywood movie. And we got Rush Hour, which was fine, and Rush Hour 2, which was okay, and Rush Hour 3, which was terrible. But Koreans are doing this really smart thing. I mean, Bae Do-na is in Cloud Atlas that's coming up. Lee Byung-hun was in G.I. Joe, and he's in the sequel if that ever comes out. Kim Ji-woon is not only directing the new Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, but, which sounds terrible, but which gives me hope, he brought his entire camera team over to work on the movie, which means it's going to look great and sound and be horrible, but it's going to look good. And so these guys are doing it right. They're taking slow chances. They're getting involved with these movies on a really interesting way that other Asian filmmakers haven't done. And so, I believe that Korea and movies in America, it might be the one place in the world where Korean movies are the Hallyu wave. Now, part 2. flip the other side. How do you get involved? I mean, what do you do? What do you do? You sit there, you're all fans, I assume, of some nature, and you're here. I mean, you're either lost or you're a fan. And you know, here's a not very inspirational story. Back in like the 90s, I used to go to this Chinese movie theater called the Music Palace. It was horrible. It was full of homeless people and some Chinese people, but mostly homeless people. But they showed a double feature, $6. It was great. I loved it. And it went up for sale in 1999. It's going to get shut down. And me and some other white dudes, we were like, oh, you're that white guy there. What's wrong with you? But okay, I'll talk to you. And we realized that we wanted to get someone to preserve this because we realized that the only Asian and Chinese, especially, movies coming to New York, if the Music Palace closed, wasn't going to be Stephen Chow. It wasn't going to be Jet Li even. It was going to be Zhang Yimou. It was going to be art films. It was going to be boring. And so we tried to get people to preserve the Music Palace. They all laughed at us, very rightly so. So then we sat down, we said, let's all put $1,000 in a pot and just do this. I don't know, it's a film festival. How hard can it be? And there were 5 of us. I at the time was an office manager for a psychic research lab. So, you know, one of us was a United Auto Workers Union rep. One of us was an electronic engineer. One of us was a DJ. I don't even remember what the other guy was anymore. And we just did this, and we learned it by doing. And now, you know, the festival's at Lincoln Center. The Korean embassy paid to have me come and talk at you. You know, so I mean, you know, it's 12 years. It's, you know, it works. You got to stick with it. And so let me just, you all need to start film festivals, is what I'm saying. It's easier and cheaper than you think. You know, and what you've got to do, because the big crisis in entertainment, especially stuff from Korea coming to the US, things are available. I can get online and order any Korean movie I want and be watching it in 3 days if I pay for expedited shipping. What's problem is the curation. There's so many movies available. No one knows what to watch. And if you show someone, you say something, you're going to love Korean movies. Let me show you, and they hate it, you're screwed because they'll never trust you again. You've got to show them something they love. And that's curation. You've got to think, not just what do I like, but what are other people going to like? What am I going to sell this on? And if you can figure that out, what does your audience, who is your audience? You're in DC. I don't know what people in DC are like. They're smart and drive a lot. But what do they want to watch? And then you got to convince them to get them there. And once they get there, they will come back. If you keep doing it, they'll keep coming back. I am a moron. I have done this. If I can do it, any of you can do it. If you went to even a high school education, you can do it. You got to be passionate about it. You got to figure out what your audience is going to want to see and show it to them. You've got to probably never work with CJ because they're really tough, but there are lots of other production companies in Korea that will send you films that you can show. You could drop me an email. I'll hook you up with anyone. I'm not real protective. The more people who are showing these movies, the better. Because frankly, and this is really why I got into this in the first place, I'm so sick of going to the movies and seeing the same thing over and over. And I'm so sick of feeling very limited, like I can only see what's on the Hollywood slate. And I feel like there's so many other film industries out there that are just as good, if not in some cases slightly better, than the American film industry. That why are we just sitting around looking at these movies we don't like and complaining? Just bring over something else. It's the film distribution method of changing the channel. It's all you got to do. It's some work. It's a little legwork. You'll meet people. Maybe you'll fall in love. I don't know. But there are good sides to it. And I'll tell you something. If you do this, and you do it enough times, and you start getting an audience, and they start trusting you, there is no better feeling than standing in the back of a theater and showing a movie like Castaway on the Moon, and you hear that first laugh from the audience, and you look around, and there's a 70-year-old chick with a walker down at one end of the aisle, and there's a 13-year-old kid who looks like he would mug me on the subway on the other aisle, and they're both laughing at the same things, and it's in Korean, and they're reading the subtitles, and they don't give a shit. They're just enjoying a really great movie. It's the best feeling in the world. So thank you guys for coming out today.